This episode is sponsored by the Freedom Builder System. For just $57 a month, you can get my custom Biz Builder AI, plus membership in the Freedom Builder community. Think of it as having me, your personal business coach and corporate escape Sherpa, right in your pocket 24/7. Biz Builder AI is your business building tool with 5 Sherpas in one powerful tool. It's a coach in AI form that helps you choose the right idea, create offers, build your financial runway, and market yourself without the cringe. And the Freedom Builder membership gives you the training, community, and accountability to actually follow through. So you're never doing this alone. Think of it as clarity, tools, and support all in one for less than the cost of a dinner out and a fraction of what you'd spend on private coaching. Check the show notes for the link, and let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to the GenX Remix, Midlife, Laughs, and Next Acts, the podcast for bold women who are ready to build a business that actually lights them up and escape corporate. Yes, as you know, always in that order. I'm your host, Tabatha Jones, the Corporate Escape Sherpa, helping women design profitable businesses, rediscover their confidence, and finally build a next act that feels like freedom. Today, I'm talking with John Gates, author and founder of Salary Coach. John helps C-suite executives and senior leaders negotiate higher compensation packages without risking their job offers or future relationships. He spent decades on the corporate recruiting side, so he knows exactly how offers get approved and where the extra money is hiding. His clients routinely walk away with 10 to 20% more in their pay packages, even in brutal job markets. What I love about John's story is how real it is. A sudden job loss led him to a low-paying gig just to keep his family afloat. Then one negotiation changed everything. That moment sparked what became the Salary Coach method, his process for helping leaders negotiate with confidence, clarity, and zero drama. Be sure to grab a pen, friends. This conversation is fun and it is packed with insider scripts, mindset shifts, and a few jaw-dropping truths about what really happens behind the hiring table. Let's jump in. All right, John, welcome to the GenX Remix. How are you doing today?
I am fantastic, Tabatha. So great to be with you today.
Oh, I'm excited to dive into this conversation as we were preparing for this chat, realizing how much we have in common with our belief in negotiation, and can't wait to share the information that you have with our listener. So before we jump in, I love to ask our guests to share their remix story. So what is your remix story, John?
Well, I for a long time have been a recruiter, probably longer than most people have been in corporate America or the corporate world. I started recruiting in 1990, before the internet was the internet, before we had email. I still remember getting resumes in the mail in an envelope with a stamp on it, and having a filing cabinet stuffed full of resumes and things that I had received over the last year or two, roughly categorized by function and things like this. I was 7 years into my recruiting career before I even saw a rudimentary applicant tracking system. So my recruiting experience began in 1990 kind of by accident. And I started recruiting because I lost my post-college job offer. I wanted to be a financial analyst. And 3 weeks before I was supposed to start with a big tech company in Portland, Oregon, they sent out messages saying, well, unfortunately, we've fallen on hard times and we're going to have to rescind any offer for anyone who hasn't yet started. And I had a newborn son at the time, and it was really disruptive, and I had no idea what I was going to do, and started networking like crazy. And I ended up finding this recruiting job for a temporary agency. And they hired me because I was a college graduate. I spoke Spanish, and I looked good in a suit. That was that was why
Hey.
they hired me, and they put me out in this newly opened office in Hillsboro, Oregon, which at the time was fairly heavily Hispanic suburb of Portland. And they wanted me to translate all the employment documents, interview people who did not speak English, and dispatch them onto jobs. And so eventually I got into corporate recruiting, and then I became the head of global recruiting for multiple Fortune 500s. Started consulting in 2016. And about 3 years ago, I thought, maybe it's time for me to really start helping individual people and families instead of corporations to be successful. I'd always been the head negotiator on behalf of corporations. And I thought maybe I could help people that I didn't know to make a lot more money safely at the negotiating table, just becoming a coach to them and teaching them the safe path through the minefield of pay negotiation. And so I started doing that. Um, I started with a pilot program. I invited 10 people on LinkedIn, and I said, I want to help you do this for free, just to see if I can help you. And the results were astounding. The smallest gain that I helped somebody get during that time was $8,000, and the biggest one was north of 50,000. And everyone had a gain though, and everyone was excited about what was happening. And I thought, I've got a product line here that I can bring to the world that's really going to help families. And I wrote the book Act Your Wage, which is on the shelf behind me. That became an international bestseller on pay negotiation. And now I'm on a mission to just demystify this for everyone. There's no reason why pay negotiation has to be scary. There's a lot of misconceptions about what it is and how to do it safely. And so that's a bit of my own story. We can go deeper if you want to, but there was a specific time in my own history where I left a lot of money on the table, even as a negotiator myself. And I spent the next 3 years working for that company, wondering how much money I left on the table. that was that was crazy. And it was a situation where they basically gave me a blank check, Tabitha. I was I had just interviewed for this position, and it was for Capital One Financial around approaching Y2K. It was in 1998. And Capital One had the worst selection process I'd ever seen in any company. Like their process was designed to decline 90% of people who interviewed. It was
Oh,
that tough. Like there were 24 behavioral competencies, and if you missed one of those, you weren't getting an offer. Three assessments, like employment tests, mental horsepower type stuff. And if you failed one of those, you were not going to get an offer. And there was a business case interview that you had to do. It was a big whiteboard exercise with math calculations and everything. And if you failed that, you weren't getting an offer. So following the interview, I go into this conference room, wiping the blood off of myself. Like that was a
right. And the sweat. Oh
grueling
my God.
whole day thing. And in comes the recruiter, and his name was Chip. And he said, John, I'm just going to level with you here. Like, we've interviewed 23 people for this, and only two have passed the process, and the other guy just withdrew. So, what's it going to take to get you to say yes and move from Oregon to Virginia to come to work here so that I can close this out and tell the manager that, she really wants you? And so what do we have to do to get a yes out of you? And so I said, well, okay, I want more salary. How about we move the incentive target up a little bit? And is there any way we can enrich the relocation plan? Because I have a house to sell, and I want to make sure that that's clear, and that I have a place to stay in the interim and all that. But they upgraded all that. They gave me everything I asked for. They said yes, 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 yes. And I flew home, and I was so excited. I felt victorious. But then I started thinking that was too easy. How, like, I got the salary went up 15,000. I thought, well, could that have been 25? Maybe. And it was at that time around the year 2000 that I started tracking how much money my candidates that I was onboarding were leaving on the table.
Hmm.
And it was a lot of money. Like I set I started setting a goal because I'd been laid off twice now already in my career as a recruiter. Wanted to try to protect myself against layoff. And so I thought, well, I want to show how valuable I am to the company. So I'm going to start tracking how much I'm saving the company in these negotiations. I would get offers pre-approved and I would extend an offer at 175, but I had approval to go up to 195 if needed. I had a $15,000 signing bonus in my back pocket that I could use if needed. And if I didn't need those and I could close lower, onto the spreadsheet it went as a savings. So I set this goal to replace my entire annual salary package every month with negotiation savings. And every month, with very few exceptions, I made that goal. And they started to recognize how good I was at this pay negotiation thing and put me in charge of training other recruiters. Eventually, I had the top recruiting job. And so I was always teaching other recruiters. So I'm used to being the guy on the other side of the negotiating table. And now I'm kind of like the prosecutor who has become the defense attorney for job seekers, specifically for senior level ones, because I can help anyone. But at the senior level, there's way more elbow room, more flexibility. And the chances of leaving a lot of money on the table at the senior level just go exponentially higher. So I guess how's that for a remix story?
It is a great remix. Oh my gosh, there were so many points in there that I was like, yes, yes, I feel that. Yes, I know that. So good. And when you said, you submitted that offer and got that answer pretty quickly, and you could have gone probably higher. I had the same thing happen to me. I turned down a promotion. It was a wild, long story. I was offered a 4% pay raise, and that was not happening. So I just said, no, thank you. I didn't even know how to negotiate at that time. I just knew I wasn't doing that, and got pulled into the CFO's office, who then asked me, what would make this offer more palatable? We want you in this position. Here's all the reasons why. And I was like, oh, take notes. She's doing what I should have been able to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then when she said, what's the number? And I said, well, 15%. I just pulled it out of my ear, right? And she said, I assume you mean on top of the 4. And I'm like, well, duh. Yeah, of course. Inside, I was shaking my head. No, like, is that really going to happen? And then as I walked out, I thought the same. I thought, wow, I probably could have gone to 25 and gotten it. But you're absolutely right, especially in those senior roles. That turns into a lot of money that's being left on the table. And what a gift for your clients to be working with someone who understands how the other side works. That's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it is fun. I enjoy it very much.
So I'm going to dive into the question that's always on the top of my mind. Do you see a difference in how men negotiate we'll stick with the senior level, how men negotiate versus how women negotiate? And maybe what are some things they're doing that are common across genders?
Yeah. I think so. Yes, I do see. First of all, I'll say that 80% of people don't negotiate at all. And that's what I noticed when I'm on the other side of the table. At least 80% of people that I'm extending offers to accept the first offer almost immediately. They don't even say, I want a couple of days to think about it. People like me are very good at applying subtle pressure to get an immediate yes out of people. We word things in a way to give the impression that there's a competitor in the wings, or there's I've really gone to the mat for you for this, hinting that a negotiation might not be possible. There are a lot of ways that I can shut down a negotiation, even if there's room to negotiate. That's just me testing your resolve. And so most people don't accept, or they do accept like that first offer immediately. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes both men and women make. Out of the remaining 20%, I'd say 10% negotiate effectively, and the other 10% negotiate disastrously. So I've seen them damage their brand, damage their reputation, and even sometimes, very rarely, they lose the offer as a result of the way they approached the negotiation. That is the main fear of most people. But going back to your question about how do men and women handle this differently, um, I'd say the effective negotiators are approaching it in a similar fashion. But there are differences among men and women on what holds them back from negotiating, and that might be worth diving into. The specific fears are a little bit different. And when I was doing research for my book Act Your Wage, I interviewed a lot of men and women who were senior level job seekers thinking about making that shift, and I asked them a question: what fears do you have about negotiating? What holds you back? Do you negotiate? Yes or no? Like, how likely do you think you'll be to negotiate your next deal? What methods would you use, and how would you approach that? And so I discovered some interesting things that I didn't really realize then, but I know much deeper now. The men and the women had different fears and emotional blockers, I'll say, that were pushing them into that 80% group. So the women, the majority of the women, at least 70%, said the main reason they didn't want to negotiate was they were concerned about damaging relationships on the way in. They didn't want to harm a relationship that might be valuable. That extended to things like the HR person extending them the offer. They didn't want to get off. They would say things like, "I didn't want to get off on the wrong foot with my new boss." They viewed negotiation as a very adversarial process when it does not have to be that way. And so if you go into if you have this vision, this understanding that negotiation is win-lose, adversarial, I'm gonna take you to the cleaners, or we're gonna have a fight or a duel, then there's a winner and a loser, and you don't want your new boss to feel like a loser when you're doing this. And so if you have that mindset about negotiation, of course, that's going to hold you back. And I discovered that most of the men didn't have that issue. They weren't concerned about rocking the boat as much as the women were. The men were more concerned about losing the offer altogether. And in their mind, that was the disaster of disasters. Would be, I'm going to go do this extensive interview process, and then I'm going to start negotiating, and I'm going to mess that up. Somehow they're going to rescind the offer, and then I have to go back to the entourage of people that are behind me or depending on me or something like that, and explain how I screwed this up. And women are afraid of that too, but the biggest concern among the women that I interviewed was that they didn't want to rock the boat. They didn't want to risk the peace. And they were also very concerned that an assertive stance would be misinterpreted through, through the sexist lens that exists in corporate America. And it might be that some of them have already experienced that double standard being leaders in corporate America. And, if you're an assertive man, you're assertive. If you're an assertive woman, you might be viewed as something different. Mm-hmm. And negotiating, part of it is assertion, but it doesn't have to be. I think the best negotiations are collaboration. And if you can shift into that mindset, you can actually showcase how great of a collaborator you are and create a win-win in the process of negotiating instead of a win-lose. So just understanding that that's possible helps men and women both to engage in the process. And the ones that negotiate well are typically not issuing ultimatums, and they're not playing a high-risk game of chicken. They are collaborating to find out what is possible and then making proposals that give the company what they want and the employee what they want, and everyone wins in that process.
That's really good. One of the things I jotted a few things down while you were speaking. Right now, as you know, the job market is extremely competitive. It is, I wish recruiters were kind of how you described your career, but not all are in that same space right now. Things are a little crazy,
Mm.
adding in ATS and AI and all of the things. What would you tell someone who right now is afraid to negotiate because they feel like if they negotiate, they're going to lose out to their competitors?
Yeah. Um, First of all, I would say that that fear is legitimate, and you need to be concerned about that. But there are ways forward that protect your ability to negotiate. I think you have to build leverage along the way. A big a big advantage in negotiating is building the right leverage for yourself and creating this sense of competition for you in the world. Um, that and that's a safe way. Like if you introduce competition into the conversation at all steps, that you're interviewing with other companies, that there are you're in the final steps somewhere else or something like that. um, it doesn't damage you the way most people think. It actually strengthens your negotiating position, and it makes them want you more. Psychologically, they will value you more if you have options than if you do not. This is uh this is a reason why people who have a current job right now are immediately stronger, because they have to compete against your current role. If you have a side hustle, a consulting business, for example, that you're doing in the interim, they have to compete against your consulting business and persuade you to mothball that and join their company. And so there are different things that you can do to make that, to improve your position against others. But I will agree with you. And I've been in recruiting for a long time, as we've discussed. This is the worst job market I have seen in 30 years. And I've been through the dot-com bust and the 2008 financial crisis and various stock market crashes and industry realignments and things like that. I've got some theories about why that's the case, but it's been that way for the last 2.5 or 3 years post the Great Resignation.
Right.
It's just been an extremely soft job market that's overwhelmed with candidates and competition. So it's natural to feel insecure in this process, but that does not mean that you're going to get a low ball offer. Companies still have important positions to fill. You're going to make a heck of a contribution and a huge impact if you're selected. And don't let that belief that the economy is soft back you into a corner on the money or make you feel insecure about it. It does not have to be that way. You can still build leverage even in the soft economy.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. It's
Mhm.
really interesting right now. And I know a lot of people are feeling it. To your point, it has been, I have never seen the job market like this, but last year I said it was bad. This year it's worse. And there are a lot of things that I believe are driving it, but it is definitely challenging. And I love the way that you position that. It's just get in there and ask for really what you want is the simple way of saying it. A
Yeah.
question for you also. What do you tell someone who came into a job interview? They were asked, what are your salary requirements? Let's say that
Mhm.
person said 150,000 a year. I
Yep.
don't advise about that, but some people do it
Mhm.
anyway, outside of advisement.
Mhm.
They've given a number, the offer comes in and they reach out to you and say, I got this offer. It's 155. Can I negotiate?
Well, I think they made a critical error by saying my salary requirement is 150 and giving a number early in the process, because as soon as you give a number, here's what happens on the other side of the table. I will write 150,000 on your resume. I'll give it to the hiring manager and I'll say, I had this great conversation with Tabatha. She's very qualified. I think you're going to like her. And guess what? We can get her for 150. And that number will stick to you like glue. Like, it's very common then for the offer to come in at 150. And then if it's 155, the hiring manager is saying, well, I want this to be a no-brainer for Tabatha, so I'm gonna stretch a little bit beyond her requirement and give her extra so that it'll be a slam dunk and she can just take it and say yes. So what's the mistake? I think the mistake early on is giving a number instead of a range. And I think that's the silver bullet here is in early pay discussions. And I hope those who are listening are taking notes here. When somebody asks you what your pay expectation is on a phone screen or in an early interview, that's a screening interview, there are a couple of things you should do. The first is you should discover what their range is. And the second thing is respond with a range of your own. And the specific words that I encourage my clients to use here is, I'm glad you asked that question because I want to have a really transparent conversation with you about this. As you know, it's still early in our process and there's still a lot to discover. And until I know more, like it's hard for me to narrow this down, but I'm in active discussions with other companies, and the range of pay, including incentives that I'm discussing with them, is between A and B. And that's good enough for most recruiters to discover if they can get you. And that's the question in that early screening when they're asking that question, the thing they want to know, the reason that they're asking that question is they want to know if they can get you. Can I get you? Yes or no? And it's easy for them to answer that if you give them a number. So they'll often pressure you for a number early on because the number it's in the number line or it's not, right? It's in the range or it's out. It's black and white for them. There's a little more doubt, but not much. If your ranges overlap, they still think that they can get you. And you just make a promise to narrow this over time as you discover the fit with the hiring manager and the impact that you're going to make in the organization. You don't know that yet because you haven't interviewed yet. But you promise that you'll narrow this down for them. But a good strategy is to get their range first and then overlap your range with theirs. Make sure, though, that the top of your range is way above the top of theirs, because almost never does someone like me tell you what the true top of the range is.
So, listener, I want you to hit rewind twice and get that back a minute and listen to that again and write it down. That was gold.
Yeah. Here's why. Like, I want to tell them why. Why somebody like me won't ever reveal the true top of the range, because as soon as you say, like, well, the range is 175 to 225, that's probably the range that we would desire to fall in. Sometimes we'll even say the absolute max is 225. We can't go above that. And that's just to test your resolve again. But the reason you don't give the true top of the range is because then the candidate almost always will say, well, 225 might be able to work for me, or that's their response, is they'll come again with a number and it will be the top of the range. But if you've ever hired people, and I know that a lot of the folks that are listening here have been leaders or are leaders, and you've hired people to work for you. When was the last time you ever hired anyone at the very top of your range? That almost never happens because of the constraints now that you're under in terms of giving future raises and things like that. So the ranges that are shared are usually the realistic range with a lot of squish in them. And the true top of the range might be 160, not or 260, not 225. But I'm thinking already ahead about closing if I'm a recruiter. So I might say 175 to 225 is the range, including incentives. It'd be very difficult or impossible for us to go above 225. How does that sit with you? What are you thinking about that? Is that something that could work for you? Tell me about your expectations. And I'm driving them into this range that's realistic and easy for me. I don't have to get exceptions approved to hire you in this range. And people know if they answer these questions wrong at this early stage that they don't get to meet the hiring manager, right? So you could respond with something like, well, I'm glad that that's your range because the range I'm discussing with other companies is in the low twos to high twos. And we have enough strong overlap here to where I think we should move forward. And I'm interested enough in the job. I think there's a really like an excellent chance that we will come together if this is a fit. So you're reassuring them that it's safe to move you forward and they're not going to be embarrassed at the finish line, right? Um, so I want, as the recruiter, to say, all right, you said 220 and I gave the top of the range at 225. Maybe there's a little negotiation, but I want to be able, if the true top is 265 or something, I want to be able to come back to you and say, I moved the mountains for you. Like we want you so much that we're coming up above the 225 number to get you. We're going to offer you 233. I had to really get this like through the gauntlet of approvers, but they agree that this is they're willing to make this exception for you. Like these are the kind of word games that people will play to get you to accept less than what you could have gotten and make you feel good about it. Meanwhile, I know I can go up to 245 and I've got a $28,000 signing bonus if you bring up what you're leaving on the table and all that stuff. And that's just the way the game works. So hopefully I'm giving the audience some really good insider information on how this stuff actually comes about.
Yeah, it's so good. It honestly, I wish I had had you early in my career when I needed help with this because a lot of us don't really know how to negotiate. And, I always kind of joke, and I said it to you before the call, like GenX, we think we're so feral, but we also have some people pleasing tendencies and we don't want anyone to be mad at us. Sometimes we don't care, I guess, but most of the time we're like, oh, I just don't want them to be mad at me. Let me just take what they're offering. And curious too, when I'm working with a client on a job search, when they receive that offer, we have rules. The rule is we accept the offer with gratitude as far as thank you so much. I'm grateful to receive this. I'd like to take a little time to review it. May I circle back with you by whatever, usually 24 hours out, 48 if they really need to think about it, but generally 24. And during that time, they immediately call the bat phone and we get into negotiation mode, which is a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
What I see happen often, if they haven't worked with me, is, oh my God, I'm so excited. Thank you. I can't wait to start next Monday. And I'm like, wait, what? Pump the brakes, pump the brakes. So what are
Yes.
your, kind of go-to strategies with your clients? How do you help them kind of push the pause and take that step back so that they don't go and start accepting something too soon?
Yeah, what's really interesting because I think about half of what I teach people is what to say and the strategy of everything, like just the mechanics of how to get through the process. The other half is managing fear and anxiety. Like I was surprised when I started coaching people through this, how much fear and anxiety were entering into everything, like the fear of losing the offer, the fear of losing the chance to interview. That dominates people. So my script for how to handle an offer when it comes in is very similar to yours. And I think we could probably copy and paste mine and yours, and they're interchangeable. Like what you just said is a perfect thing to say. You have to be grateful for the offer. And thank you so much for this offer. I modify it slightly and I say, I'm excited about the possibility of working for you, because that kind of opens the door that there might be some minor adjustments needed in the offer for me to be able to say yes to it. But this is a very big decision for me. I want to make sure it's the right decision. I have some stakeholders that I want to confer with before I can do this. And here's how I manage the negotiation process. My step one after receiving an offer is for them to call me, buy some time, buy a couple of days, call me, and then together we're going to look at the offer, surgically dissect it, and we're going to begin asking questions. So when they get an offer. They're grateful for it. They say, I'd like a couple of days to consider it. And I will probably have some questions for you. So I'd like to bring those questions back to you in a couple of days just to clarify a few points, if that's okay. Now, nobody on the other end of an offer is going to say, no, it's not okay for you to ever ask any questions. You have to accept this. It's written in stone and all your questions should be answered. If that ever happened to somebody, that would be a massive red flag, right?
Huge red flag.
Yeah.
No.
So it very rarely or almost never happens where the people on the other end of the phone are so rigid that they won't allow you to ask questions. They might press and say, well, what questions do you have? And it's like, well, I need some time to think about this and to sleep on it and build a complete list of questions so we can get through this as fast as possible. So from there, I coach them through, like I'm helping them to spot the questions that they should ask. And sometimes when you're negotiating, you ask questions where you already know the answer is no. For example, you're interviewing for a privately held company, it's owned by a family, and one of your questions might be, well, I see that there's no equity stake in the offer. Would it be possible to include one? That's a question, the very safe question to ask. You already know that it's family owned 100%. Maybe they've even already told you that there's no equity position. But as soon as they start saying no to some of these things that you're asking about, they start to feel like the offer is not quite there, that they might have to fill in the gap with something else. And they begin to imagine like they've already selected you. They want you to say yes. And so it's like, well, okay. Some of the other companies I'm talking to are offering equity positions. And you can start to imagine how that conversation can move in a collaborative way. Like, I really want to join you, but this is an obstacle for me. How can we get past this? And you're inviting them to solve a gap. So part of the strategy of asking questions is to bring gaps in the offer out into the open where everyone can see them, if that makes sense, right? I go through this in my book extensively, but I spend a lot of my time dissecting an offer to help the client find the gaps and bring how to bring the gaps forward without putting the offer at risk. So there are definite ways of doing this that do not put the offer at risk, where you don't have to say, I like this offer, but it's 15% too low or 28% too low or something like that. You're leading the company into this idea that they may have to make some adjustments to get the yes that they want out of you. A real bedrock of negotiation is that when somebody wants something from you, you can get something in return. So, um, in in this situation where they've extended an offer, they've selected you after a long interview process. They want you to say yes. When they want you to say yes, then you might be able to ask for something in return for your yes. And
Like that.
that feels a lot more collaborative than the game of chicken that I mentioned before, where it's like you're shooting in the dark. You're saying, I need this much, or it's going to be a no for me. And as soon as you give the ultimatum too, then if they say yes immediately, you're in the same situation I was in 1998. You're going to wonder, did I just leave $40,000 on the table because I didn't ask for enough?
Yeah.
And that's really difficult to get through. The secret sauce of what I do is kind of hidden between the lines in this stuff, but it's there, it's possible, and um, it's uh, it's shocking how much money people will discover is still on the table when they start asking these questions, especially at the C-suite level. You're negotiating with a
Absolutely.
CEO. Keep in mind, like if you're interviewing for a chief financial officer job or a CIO or a chief HR officer role, you're negotiating probably with the CEO who has the authority to make any exception he or she wants to make. If they want you, maybe they've even already told the board that they found their new leader. You have a lot of leverage to get a little bit more here and a little bit more there. And it's more than just salary. There are a ton of things you can negotiate on. And all these little, yes, I can give you that. Yes, we can move that a little bit. Yes, I can make you a little more comfortable in the relocation. Here's how we're going to do that. All that stuff piles up. C-suite people are leaving six figures on the table all of the time.
Yeah, makes you choke a little when you think about it, right? That's a lot
Oh,
of
yeah.
money.
Yeah. I had one client that came to me just like you described. He was my client for 3 or 4 months. He knew what to say and what to do. And he called me up and he said, John, I just got an offer. I'm so excited from this company we've been talking about. I'm just worn out from this job search. I think it's good enough. I think I'm just going to take it. And when you find that voice, that I think it's good enough, you're justifying, like you're afraid that they're going to pull the offer. And that's why you tell yourself that story. You give yourself permission to settle for less by saying, I think this is good enough. You just want to do away with all the uncertainty in your life. And you have the opportunity to do that right now just by saying yes. All the fear, all the insecurity just goes away, right? That's what this client did. He came to me. It was a chief operating officer client.
Wow.
And I said, hold up. You've already told me you need a couple of days and you did the right thing there. Let's start asking questions. And we started asking questions and we discovered there was a tremendous amount of flexibility. The salary went up, I think, $60,000, which is not that much. When I tell you the whole offer went up $613,000.
Wow.
We moved his incentive target up. We got them to waive the proration on his first bonus, which was worth 95,000 extra dollars just by changing a sentence in the offer letter. They included a six-figure signing bonus. They included 6 figures of additional equity at signing. That it just piled on. This, and this all added up to a couple of cheap Ferraris that he almost left on the table. And
Yeah.
it shocked me. Like, I was amazed at how the CEO was willing to flex and give. And the truth was, they were in a tough spot with the investors, and the board was expecting major movements that the new chief operating officer was going to be able to deliver. Tens of millions of dollars in value happening in the first year, 600,000 extra dollars in the mind of the CEO is worth it, because guess what? The CEO's bonus depends on the new COO delivering on these aggressive commitments. The CEO's job might be on the line, because if he hires the wrong COO and these things don't happen, how does that CEO look in front of the board of directors who has the power to fire him and bring in a new CEO to right the ship? Tremendous leverage in this situation. And when your own bonus is on the line, you'll spend other people's money all day to secure your own incentive plan. That's
Funny how that works.
the dirty little secret that most people don't think about. They'll invoke the, well, we don't have the budget thing, but at the end of the day, they're worried about making their own bonus payout. They're worried about their keeping their own job. And this is true, especially for leaders. If they've selected you, that means that they believe that you're the one who's going to come in and make their nightmare go away.
Absolutely. Most of us don't like to go with our plan B. And sometimes there isn't a plan B, there's not another candidate. So, what I'm
Yep.
hearing is that it is worth negotiating the right way and being collaborative with it instead of issuing that ultimatum. What a great
Yes.
client success story. That was going to be my next question for you. So you beat me to the punch on that one. Good job.
Yay.
Yay. So tell us a little bit about your book, John. I know we're kind of coming up on time, but
Okay.
tell us about your book and really what promoted or prompted you to write it.
Sure. I've got Act Your Wage right here. This is it. And it's
Title.
on Amazon for anybody that would like to check it out. And it's really about 75% of what I tell people in a coaching relationship. So the information is there and it's not the usual annoying half truth, half story, half everything. There's complete scripts about what to say at every step of the process in that book. So I like it and I recommend it because I wrote it. But I wrote it because for a couple of reasons. Like, first, I wanted to demystify these topics. There's so much bad information about how to negotiate. And you're crawling around LinkedIn, you have people talking about negotiation all of the time. And most of the time, what I'm hearing from people is repeated bad advice. And I know it's bad advice because I'm the guy on the other side of the table. I know if somebody did that to me, it would be bad. It would limit, they would paint themselves into a corner, they would leave money on the table, or they might put the offer at risk with that approach. And so I decided I was going to create this easy, accessible guide for people to begin that. And you know, when you're starting a new consulting practice like I did with Salary Coach, um, it's helpful to be a published author. It improves your credibility in the space as the expert on this. And there are a lot of business coaches and career coaches who do a little bit of negotiation coaching as part of the overall service to their clients. But there are very few people who do this exclusively as an area of specialty. And the book has really helped me to get on the map as somebody who does this effectively. Um, and it's helped me to land a lot of speaking engagements too. Like,
Yeah.
if you're looking for speakers for a convention, and I always try to think of things from another person's perspective. If you're planning a convention and you're selling tickets to the event, and you want people are going to pay to come to this thing, your worst nightmare is to have a speaker who doesn't know what they're talking about, who's going to be like
Yeah.
boring or otherwise a dud. And then people fill out the evaluations and it's like, well, I guess you're not going to be doing that again because you failed like, that's their fear, is that they're going to bring in a poor speaker for the event. And so being the person who wrote the book on that creates this sense of security and comfort in feeling like, yeah, we got a good person. We can publish this out. We can say the person who wrote this book is going to be on stage, and that's why you should buy a ticket to come.
Yeah.
So for me, it's been a great career advancement opportunity. And for those who are listening, who are knowledge consultants or people who are out there trying to sell their knowledge and sell their expertise, writing a book is a thing you should consider doing. It really does propel you to the next level of credibility. And that's another thing I do besides salary coach is I help people to start consulting businesses if that's something that they want to do in the interim. And a lot of my salary coach clients need to do that for reasons we've discussed today. So it's just been a natural kind of bolt on. So I do that from time to time, help people to start consulting businesses, and being a credible expert in what you do is part of that success ingredient.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. We still have so much in common. It's bizarre that we didn't meet until today. Also published my book, Promotion Ready in 3 Months. It's a women's guide to career advancement. And it
Mm.
does, once you're able to start sharing that story and show like you can do it. It's, you just
Mm.
maybe need to adjust your strategies a little bit. And then with your individuals building consulting businesses, that's right up my alley right now. I'm working a lot on that.
Yeah,
Just
yeah, I know
created a whole new AI tool.
you're the Sherpa, right, for this?
I am. And I
And
just launched an AI tool for coaches and consultants starting their business. And we're going to have another play date and check it out.
let's talk about that,
So
because
good.
through this effort of teaching people how I'm helping them to launch a consulting business from zero to launched in 6 weeks. I'm going to be giving birth to a lot of new entrepreneurs, and I think it would be lovely to introduce you to them, because
Gosh.
I think that could be a real synergy that we can bring to the world together, and I would enjoy that very much.
Yeah. Well, to quote a line from one of my favorite movies, Step Brothers, did we just become best friends?
Yes, look at all the activities we could do in
Oh
here.
my gosh, so much room for activities. I love it. Oh my gosh, John.
Yes.
So, for our listener who would love to connect with you, maybe to talk about your, love of Step Brothers, or definitely about negotiation or your book or
Sure.
your consulting side, starting your consulting business, what is the best way that they can connect with you?
The best way is probably just to come to me through email, which is john@salary.coach, or you can go to my website at salary.coach. And you can
Perfect.
see what I have to offer there. You can book an appointment to talk to me from that website. It's very easy to do. And tell me your story and see if there's something that I can do to help you succeed. I'd love that opportunity. If anybody would like to meet me personally, that's the best way.
Perfect. We'll include that link in the show notes as well as the link to your book, Act Your Wage. I love that title so much. And then
Thanks.
before we end today, do you have any final words of wisdom, inspiration, or advice for our listeners?
Yes, we've batted around this a little bit, but don't accept the offer immediately. Use Tabitha's script, use my script, whichever one you want. Buy a couple of days and really think about it. Do not impulsively um, accept the offer because you are anxious or afraid, and there's a soft market, and you're afraid this might slip through your fingers. It's safe to buy yourself a couple of days if you use the script that Tabitha mentioned during our call today. And if you're one of her clients, reach out to her immediately, and she can guide you through the negotiation just the same as I can. And get some help through this, because if you're looking, the stakes are very high. I understand that. Tabitha understands that your personal stakes are extremely high. It's great to have somebody who can help you through that, managing the emotions that you're feeling when the offer finally comes. Huge sense of relief. I know that. Or sometimes you might get an offer you feel like, oh, this is a low ball. What am I supposed to do now? Having an advisor with you is going to be very helpful. Um, but even if you don't want to do that, you want to do this all on your own, you can. You can. Um, the first step in that is don't impulsively accept the offer immediately, even if you love it. Your dream job comes, it's 20% more than you thought it was going to be. Still, even in that situation, thank you for the offer. I really appreciate this. Um, it's an important decision for me. I may have a few questions, if that's okay. I need a couple of days to formulate those questions, and I'll get back to you then. Do that, and you'll be way ahead of 80% of the others. And you might be surprised. Sometimes even doing that, they'll say, well, they'll indicate that there's room to maneuver sometimes. They'll show their hand a little bit sometimes. I hope that answers your question, Tabitha, and really helps somebody that's here listening today.
Oh my gosh, answered my question. I know our listeners are feeling inspired and excited to go negotiate. So, definitely, listeners and friends, please be sure to connect with John Gates. His email will be in the show notes. grab his book because that is really important. I always say don't wait until it's time to learn a skill, start learning it before. So who knows when that next promotion or a job opportunity may come up. So
Oh,
be
yes.
ready.
This
All right.
this this skill is something that will pay you every day of your professional life. It's worth building.
Oh, absolutely. John, thank you so much for joining us on the Gen X Remix. This has been a lot of fun, and we will definitely be in touch.
Thanks, Tabitha.
Ooh, that was so good. I bet you weren't expecting John to hand you a masterclass in salary power moves. So don't waste it. Stop saying yes on the spot. Say thank you, ask for time, and negotiate like the boss you are. You can connect with John at the link in the show notes and grab his book, Act Your Wage, on Amazon. And friends, if you're done negotiating for someone else's dream and you're ready to build your own, come join me inside the Freedom Builder system. It's where I help women escape corporate the smart way by building profitable, purpose-driven coaching, consulting, and service-based businesses that actually fund your freedom. The link is in the show notes. Be sure to check it out. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Gen X Remix. Until next time, friends, keep negotiating. You are worth it. We'll see you next time.